You got to understand what a W-2 person is. That's an actual employee, okay, versus a 1099 contractor, which is somebody's kind of outside, external, maybe a consultant, things like that. So there's tests you can look at from that. Go to irs.gov and you can look at, do I have a 1099 or do I have a W-2? And it's kind of a reasonableness test, right? Are you telling that person what to do on a daily basis and you managing them? Right there, if the answer is yes, they're W-2, right? Do you provide their truck to them and do you provide their equipment to them? If the answer is yes, that's a W-2, right? 1099 should have their own stuff, if that makes sense. So can they work for somebody else, right? If it's a true consultant, they have like 7 or 8 clients, right? So they work for somebody else, then that's an independent contractor, right? So it's really big for many, many, many reasons. So the first thing is, if you misclassify, it's just flat out illegal, right? If you got a bunch of W-2 people and you're classifying them as 1099, it's just, one, it's highly unethical and it's illegal. And what I mean by that and why you pays the other side, 8% each, right? If you work for yourself, you're an independent contractor, you pay both sides of that. And they call that self-employment tax. So obviously, if you're a small business owner, you want all of your workers to be listed as an independent contractor, if that makes sense. So, and it may be true. Maybe all the workers are independent contractors. I own an oil and gas company, and 99% of my workers are independent contractors, but they own their own trucks, they own their own equipment, they work for other people. So yes, they are independent contractors. And I even went above and beyond. We talk about subject matter experts all the time, right? So I seeked counsel on, are my workers 1099 or W-2? And they gave me an opinion letter. They asked me a lot of questions and things like that. Probably cost me $3,000 or $4,000. And they're like, yeah, Paul, yes, these guys are independent contractors. That's in my file. If I ever get audited, here's a letter from a CPA saying that we've already gone through these tests and asked all the questions, and these are independent contractors. So if you kind of have any questions or concerns, do I have a W-2 or a 1099, definitely seek counsel here. That's the first thing I look at. Is some of the questions I start asking is, most small businesses, I'm just going to throw out a number, 90% of them should have W-2, right? So as I said, there's going to be some that have 1099 and it's valid. Like I just said, the oil and gas company that I have, that's a valid point to make there. But when it comes down to it, is the fact is, most small businesses you look at, they don't want to have W-2. They're going to want 1099 because they don't want to pay those payroll taxes. But as a small business owner, post-acquisition, you're going to do the right thing because it will catch up to you, right? The IRS is going to come knocking. And if you had misclassified this, they're going to come get you. Okay, so you know that for a fact that you're going to change this over to W-2. So let's assume that their payroll is $1 million, okay? And their side of that payroll tax is $80,000 because, again, the employer pays half and the employee pays half, right? Well, they're not paying it because they'll list them all as 1099. Makes sense? So, you're going to do post-acquisition, you're going to convert them to W-2 because that's the right thing to do ethically and it's the right thing to do legally. Makes sense? If you take that extra $80,000 of costs you're going to assume and you're buying a company at a 3x multiple, you just overpaid by $240,000. Right? So if you offered them $1 million and you find this during due diligence, you're going to ask for a purchase price reduction. And why? Does that make sense? So that's one of the good things about the due diligence is you're going to find these things, you're going to ask questions and stuff like that. Maybe you don't know that during the letter of intent versus the initial valuation of that company because you haven't been able to ask questions. Well, what do your workers do? Do they own their own equipment? Do they own their own trucks? Do they work for other people? That isn't necessarily something you can ask up front. That's what you find in due diligence. So understanding that, you're going to save $240,000.
Amanda bought a boutique design agency. It seemed lean and profitable, low payroll, high margins. But 6 months in, she was audited by the IRS. Turns out 7 of the 8 people listed as independent contractors were working 40-plus hours weekly, used company computers, had company emails, and were being supervised daily. The prior owner had misclassified them for years. Amanda was fined over $60,000 for back payroll taxes and penalties. She also had to pay retroactive benefits, and 2 of the contractors sued for unpaid PTO. It drained her reserves and almost sank the business. Always know who is working for your company and what your responsibility to them is.
Well, now that you've actually listened to this video, you got a little bit of working knowledge. Still super confusing. Go out to irs.gov. Probably only 2 pages long of do I have a W-2 versus 1099. Okay. But I would say during due diligence, that's when you're going to bring in your subject matter expert to actually really get into the details and find out if they really are W-2 or 1099. And then you have an open conversation with the seller. It's like, look, it's like, you've been doing this wrong for a long time. Here's what we found here. And you could substantiate and support that, hey, these are W-2 and I got to convert them post-acquisition. That's going to cost me next year $80,000. And I can't assume that cost. So we're going to have to talk about a purchase price reduction. And either you get it or you don't. If you don't, you got to walk away from it.